Hello, this is a short update on my previous 1.16 multi-item sorter. Basically, just spent a bit more effort getting the redstone to fit into a smaller space. So to go over the principles of it, this uses some components from Nembon's multi-item sorter. Specifically, we start with the clock. So this is the same clock. Out of Nembon's sorter, we've got a comparator in subtraction mode, and this basically is running the clock signal, which goes into this observer, which then runs into a repeater. And what this gives us is an uneven on and off pulse. So the goal is, if we have a look at these lanterns over here, is you want it so that there's never two lanterns that are both off next to each other, because if that happens, then you're going to have an item drop between two hoppers all at once. So each of these redstone lamps represents a hopper. So we want off pulses as short as possible that would allow it to feed an item into a chest, but no longer. And the rest of the time it should be on, and never should two hoppers be off together. And this is basically a timing circuit from Nembon's design that achieves that. I'm not going to go into how he came up with this. Please watch his video if you want to do that. The only difference from the timing, so we keep his timing circuit, but the rest of it's a little bit different in terms of running the hoppers. So we also have to have a delay between these two sides because they're offset. So that's 1 tick, that's 7, so there's a 6 tick delay. So every 6 ticks, these two sides are swapping sides, and each of these are running up into target blocks so that the redstone ladder powers the target block, which powers the lantern / hopper. Also important is none of these redstone lines go into any of the droppers, because we do not want to power the droppers because they are going to be part of a separate system. But I've shown it here so you can see how we can get the droppers right up against the line. You can't put droppers here because otherwise they get powered by the target blocks. So the only other aspect of the multi-item sorter is the dropper elevator itself. Again, this dropper elevator here, comparator signal detects that item is in the dropper, and then runs into this clock mechanism that repeatedly does block updates to power items up the drop elevator. Again, this entire drop elevator is Nembon's design. I haven't modified it at all. I've simply taken it as is. And that's all the components of a multi-item sorter. So if we just have a look at how this goes together, an item comes into the input chest, enters the dropper elevator, that runs the clock to send items up to the top at a preset rate. The rate needs to be slow enough to allow not to clog the system, essentially. This repeater also powers this block, which powers this line. That switch there isn't required, it's just for testing purposes. But if any of these drop elevators are running, we run a signal to start our clock. So this is just running a line into a pulse extender. Pulse extender is just there to make sure that after the item hits the bottom of the elevator, it has enough time to get to the top of the elevator, across the drop, the hopper, power, try each chest and get to the next elevator. So that extends the pulse into the clock I showed you before. So this is the same clock I showed you before. Into an observer with the pulse going into a repeater to extend the pulse. And then we just feed it into these redstone elevators in an alternating pattern. And that's basically it. The redstone signal then goes up into these alternating patterns such that these blocks alternate the same way as those lamps do. The only difference is instead of redstone lamps, we have hoppers feeding into chests. So if we take some items from one of our chests, we'll take 4 of the andesite here, we put it back into an input chest. You can see that after a short while, it should come back and feed into this chest. Now, this is a multi-item sorter. I've done other videos that talk about multi-item sorters in more depth. But a multi-item sorter is essentially a system where hoppers try to feed into each chest one by one until they find an item that will accept it, and then after a delay give up and feed into the next hopper. And that's basically it. Everything you need to know to make a multi-item sorter in 1.6. 1.16. It only works on 1.16 because this behavior of target blocks redirecting the redstone both into the target block and away from the dropper is a feature of redstone in 1.16. It will not work in 1.15.